Hey everyone. Today, under the guise of an FAQ, a team FAQ, we're going to talk about layouts, how you create Coda docs that feel like apps. I think this is probably the most requested video I've had. A lot of people wondering how to make their Coda docs just look and feel a little bit cleaner and improve the user experience for certain tools. So, what I mean by layout is the way a row looks when you pop it open. So, this right here is called the modal. And this is what opens up when you click to expand or view a row. And the layout is the specific way that you've got your modal set up. So, if you didn't know, edit layout lets you move columns around and choose what you want the user to see in order to improve the user experience and direct the workflow where you want it, where you need it. So I want to look at layouts in kind of three phases. And the first is just the simple sort of layout that you get when you open up any kind of row. We'll talk about the layout and making changes to the layout, just general. It doesn't matter if you're opening it by a button or what, just how this looks and how we can make it look a little bit cleaner. Phase two, we'll look at creating a different layout that can be used. So, for example, when a user wants to post a new question, they see this layout where they just get to choose some specific information, which is different from when they open up the question after it has been posted and then they can see the answers. So, two different layouts of the same information. And the third is we'll create this button so that we can have different people view different layouts. So in this case, if I highlight what's relevant to me, these categories in green are ones that I'm a champion for. So I have the ability to answer these questions, and when I open them up, I see this layout where I can add a new answer and change the category and such. But for this IT support category where I'm not a champion, I see a very different layout where I see the best answer and then other answers, but I can't actually change any of this information. So as always, this template is now live in the CODA Guild Library. So for 240 Canadian, you can get this template plus now 15 others. We're up to, this is week 16, so new tool every week. And you can also join a community of builders, a decentralized team spread between organizations, but bound together by their passion for Coda. And together we're learning, we're experimenting, and looking for you and your insane Coda knowledge to come and help and contribute. Okay, back to the learning. So phase one, I think I was saying, is really just looking at how we can edit our layouts. So I'll go to a table that doesn't have a button right now. So maybe this Teams table. So anytime you have a table, you have the ability to open the row, expand the row. And so this source table ST Teams, if I expand the row, it just looks like this, right? It's pretty basic. It's just showing me the three columns. And if I go up here and say edit layout, then I have the ability to play with that layout. So first thing I usually do is rename the layout in case I need it later. So I'll say Teams main layout. And with any of these columns, if I click, I get some styling options. So I can make a large label at the top. I can move the label over to the side, which only works if it's a short label, otherwise it'll truncate it. And best for buttons is removing the label altogether. I find though, when someone has opened up the row, it's nice to give them a title up at the top, right? So I like to add at least a large label and generally center whatever the title of this thing is. So say done, go back, take a look. You're like team HR, great, I get it. Um, and then for something like people, when it's just gonna show me a list of people, I don't know that I want to necessarily see it as a table, but you can see I've got that option, right? So it's up to me how I want to display this data. And if I go down to the option settings here, I have some more, but visually here, I can do it as a drop down. I mean, a list. It's really up to you. I'm probably not going to display my people as a timeline, but you can see how that might be helpful um, in certain cases. So for this, I'm probably just going to center this, and you can see I can push things over to the right, and that becomes helpful when you do something, for example, when you hover over the side here and you want to drag a column up beside another one. So you have the ability to move four different columns of data side by side. And the part of the reason keep saying columns is, I mean, this is what we're talking about here. These are the actual columns within our table, right? So every time we add another column, let's say I've got a checkbox or something, that now becomes available for me to use within my layout. And I mean, that's a pretty powerful thing when you start thinking about display columns and header columns. I mean, really, you can get creative and make almost anything you want in here. Now, one thing I tend to do is hide this show hidden columns. I generally don't want people to see anything other than what I've prepared for them. Um, Sometimes I'll hide comments. Like if I add my own notes notes functionality, then then I'll take the comments off. Otherwise, leave them on at your discretion. But there we are. So that's horrible. Let's actually go back in and fix that up. So first of all, you can do almost everything in here that you would do out in the table. So I can delete that column if I don't want it. You can add formulas from here. You can see this one already is a formula because it's looking up to this people table. And the only thing to be aware of is when you want to view a relation column as a table, and this is only relation columns can be viewed as a table here because really you're looking up to that other data source. I'll show you from here. All right, this category champion. In this case, for the FAQ, what this means is the HR team is the category champion for these categories. So this is where I would say drop down. Maybe IT is also responsible for company info. Um, and that controls in this doc who is able to respond and answer questions. But because this is a relation column, that means that within my layout, I can display that column as a table of its own. And so you can see I've got all of my same options here that I would almost. You don't get sub items within the modal, but I mean that's a side piece, and hopefully CODA enables it soon. But basically, you've got most of the options here that you would, um, for a view of that table anywhere else within your doc, which is pretty cool because it means if I've got tasks or something, I can show them as a timeline within a layout. And depending on the layout, I might want tasks to be a timeline. I might want it to appear as calendar. So you've got a lot of flexibility there. The only thing I'll mention is that sometimes it gets confusing for people when they're editing the layout and they try to edit this table, right? Go to the option. You can't change anything about this table like add or delete columns from here. All you can do here is change sort of how it's displayed within the layout. Okay, so if you want to change columns within a table within the modal, then you've got to do it from here. So here I'm probably going to hide the line. We'll talk about that in a moment. Notice almost always the columns are unwrapped. So you have to wrap the text for most of them. It defaults to unwrapped. So just in case it'll truncate things. But you can group, for example. So you can make this appear however you want. Now, in this case, because what I'm doing with a team, excuse me, is actually making that selection, it probably makes more sense to have that not appear as a table and instead appear as a drop down, because I want to be able to select easily from within my layout. Now, I don't actually need a layout for teams at all, so this was just an example of some of the kind of basic features of um, creating a layout. And so so basic layout features fine. Let's look at a few more advanced layout features. Okay, so I'll go to the FAQ main view. Now, I've got a lot of columns in this one. And what you notice when I go into this layout, well, first of all, it's not selected. So this is something you need to be aware of. If you want a layout to appear, a specific layout to appear when someone uses, let's say, the stock expand row button, which you can turn on from options, table display, and pin expand row button. So if you want people to be able to see a specific layout, it has to be assigned to the view of the table. Okay, so and we'll touch on this in a little bit, but imagine that each view of a table can have its own layout. So this, in this case, STFAQ right now has no layout assigned, and you can tell that. But when I go up here, it says, I can't edit this one. It's just showing me the columns that I have displayed in the table. But if I want to pick a different layout to assign, here are the layouts that I've already created, and this is why naming those layouts is so important, because sometimes, at some point you're going to need to choose how you want that to look. So again, pick a different layout. I can make this is my new question layout, but this is my answering questions layout, and I can assign any one of those to any table I want, and that becomes useful later on. So you'll imagine if you had a canvas with a table, and you just wanted people to be using the stock expand row button, then it becomes really important to assign the correct layout to each of these views, because this one is a view of that table that we were just looking at in the back. Okay, so when I open this up, you can see a few different things. So I've pushed these question and category as over to the side. I'll open this up so you can see what's going on here. A couple things you notice first. One is, yeah, these, it's just how I wanted them laid out, is this left-hand piece. And what you'll notice is if I say, make this label like question for people to ask other people, and then I go out, like that gets truncated. Okay, so you just have to be aware that if you're using this, if you're using this left-hand label style, then you need to keep your label quite short. Um, the other thing you'll notice about these labels is, in this case, the column is called question locked, but I wanted it to be called question. Now that is a per layout um, title here. So what do they call them? A long name. Okay, so these long names in the instructions are per layout, which means that, if I've got an advanced user and they're looking at data in one layout, they'll see something different here if I assign it in that. And same, yeah. Okay, I'll stop there. So the other thing you'll notice here is the horizontal line. Okay, so this is kind of a hack, but I think it's a really cool one because, yeah, it just lets you break up the views a little better. And you can see in something like, actually, if I open up this one using the button, see here just how nice it is to have some sort of separation. Because if let's say I take this one out, line 2 and line 1. Okay, so that just starts to get a little bit busy. It's not as easy to understand what is happening in each section. So those lines can come in really handy. And again, if I bring those up, I have the ability to drag and drop them either over here. Sometimes they don't land where you want them to, so don't be discouraged if that happens. If I find you just have to play with them sometimes to get them to land where you want. And you can see I can drag them around um, and then just drop them where I need them. Okay, so what is this line made up of though? Well, this is part of the reason I have these settings pages in my docs is this is a formula called rectangle. And rectangle needs three parameters. Well, I guess you can give it a fourth. I never give them a name, but it's looking for a width, a height, and a line color. So what I tend to do is create a separate formula or a separate column, no, a separate canvas formula for each one of those parameters so that I can change them as I need to. Now, I also have these sort of locked into formulas. You could make them text control, right? If you really wanted people to be able to see personal settings, like everybody could have their own, for example, color of line. Now, the reason I break color out is because sometimes people like to have like a branded color as their line separator, but this is just a hex code, and you can look up hex color codes um, to find the one that you want. So yeah, that's all it is, and then it's named, and that becomes the important part. Is in this case I've named it H because you'll notice I do have vertical ones here too, which is pretty fun. Um, but this modal line H is just the horizontal one, and when you call it that, it gives you the ability to, let's go back to teams. You can add it from here. So here I would say modal. Oh, you can't actually do it there. Okay, so it's got to be a text column. Make it a text. I call it line one, line two, line three, line four, whatever, and then add a formula. And now that you've named that canvas, you can just call it up. Right? So you can just type it in there and it comes, it gets pulled in. Now, sometimes they look like they're a little bit different in width, just to deal with it, I guess. I don't know. I don't have any explanation for that. But you can also do it from within your layout as well. And I tend to do a lot of work in these, like adding columns and such here. So you can add a formula here, modal line H. Okay, and then the only thing you'll have to do is notice it's showing the label, the column label, and it looks sort of gray behind the line. If you go to the line, remove the label, and then the gray goes away, the label goes away, and I usually just center it just in case, and there it is. Okay, cool, 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 cool. I think the only other sort of advanced piece to talk about is headers. Um, this is a header, and this is a header. So when we look at the columns, you'll notice I could have just, in some cases I will make this, use this label and make it large, and that's all we need. But for this, I wanted to make my own new answer button instead of using the per table one, partly because I wanted to make sure that only certain people, like champions, were able to click it just in case somebody found their way to this table. So this button, FAQ this row, right. And so the problem that run into is if I don't have a header here, what do I do with this button? Like the label's down here, but really that label should encompass the button as well, right? This is part of my section called answers. And so you just make a header and it's just a simple text column. I'll bring it back first. Where is it? I always try to label them as headers so that I can find them easily. And sometimes I'll forget to update the actual name, but it's fine. You can change it later. So now I can drag and drop this wherever I want. And you'll see when you look at the formula, it's just a text column, and you just put whatever you want to show up within quotation marks, and it'll just pull it in, right? Answers for you, right? Anything you put in there, and which also means you can concatenate this, and it's really great for, watch, if we wanted to, I could say concatenate and say answers for, and I've got a formula that looks up to the whoever is currently in the doc. Maybe I'll put nickname. Oh, I don't have a nickname for that person. Name. Right. It's great to have that preview window too. Okay, cool. So if you had something like a count for the number of answers, the header could be answers, and then in brackets it could say two, or you could say two answers, whatever you want. So that's another benefit of using kind of a header column for that. So yeah, let me back my way out of this. All right, I think that's it. Now, um, phase two. We want someone asking a question to see a different view because the important thing is that they identify the category and then write their question. So, and part of the reason why I wanted to do it that way is because I wanted them, after they identify the category, to be able to see the other questions within that category and then, decide, hey, do I still need to post this question at all? Because sometimes people might come in here and just have this like burning question, click on the new question button and not even read to see if there are other, like if there's already a question. Um, and so in that case, we've got two views, right? We wanted a separate view just for asking what somebody's question is. So in this case, again, I'm just going to put in, boy, I don't know, company info. What's our website? Again, as if they've asked multiple times. So here, again, I could see there's this other question here. Are we more like the Rebel Alliance or the Republic? Is the only other question about company info. Okay, and if I, choose HR, then now I see the HR questions down here. And I wanted to put in a cancel button because sometimes you decide you want to post a question, then you see it down here and you realize you don't really need it. And actually what I'm seeing is that I want to be able to open from here. So I'm going to bring my open button in and we'll talk about that in phase three, but just so it's there, open. Okay, so now I just need to shorten down my answer. Great. Yeah, cool. So how do we make it so that one person can see uh, that view, and then when you open up the table itself, you see this other view where you get the question and the best answer and the other answers? Well, pretty easily actually. So we saw how you can assign a layout to a specific table view, and that's just by opening and choosing pick a different layout. But it's like, how do we access those via button? And I mean, that's a pretty easy one. So if we right click this button, take a look at what it's saying. Saying, first of all, we want to open a row. What row do we want to open? A new row. And this new row called add row. And let's put this down. The open row formula, when you dig into it, it says, what's the row you want to open? Well, in our case, this is the add row, and we're going to add a row to the FAQ table. And then what view do you want to see it in? And that's where we can select any of our views. And this is where naming becomes important as well, right? So FAQ. But look what's coming up. It's not actually a layout we're selecting, it's a view of a table. So I know it's new question, and then we'll go back to what that table view piece means, but you can also see I can select a view mode. So do I want it to show up in the center full screen or push over to the right? So that's kind of nice to be able to force somebody's view like that as well. But what does this mean that this is showing me a view of a table and not one of my layouts? Well, it's what we talked about where any view can have a layout assigned to it. If you want people to be able to see a layout, it has to be assigned to a table view. Okay, so I'll go back and I'll say that again. The only way to make people see your layouts is to assign that layout to a table view. So every time you want to create a new layout, you have to create a new view of your table, or at least have a new view of your table ready to go. So in this case, you can see I've got my primary table named ST so that I know I don't touch that one. And then I have the FAQ table, which is on the FAQ page. So that's like a view of it on the main page. And then I have these two separate views here. And these views are only here so that I can show my different layouts. So for example, answering or new question. When I open this up, I can see this is my table, which is the FAQ new question view, and the layout is FAQ new question. So you have to create your layout and then assign it to a view. And one thing to be aware of, let's say I wanted a variation of this new question layout. If I edit this layout, and I don't want to start from scratch, I want to duplicate this one. Well, I can do that up in this top corner and just duplicate my layout. And that's great. So here's a copy of FAQ new question. So that's fine. What you'll notice though is that FAQ new question, so this was the view that we're on now, it's still assigned to the layout that was assigned to it before. So this layout is now not assigned to any view, which means nobody can see it. So if I had intended for this table view to be showing this layout, then I need to go back in and select it. So sometimes it's just not intuitive um, when you're choosing your layouts that you have to go into the view, open it up, and then select which layout you want to see. So just make sure when you're checking, just double check. Um, okay, great. So that's that's pretty much it for phase two, right? Now we've got a button that will show a specific layout, and that's because it's attached to that backend view. And now on to phase three, which is really getting more complex with showing different views to say different people. So in this doc, you can see I've got my two profiles here. And so I've made it so that I can see what questions are related to me, what questions I've asked and what questions I've answered. And I can turn that off as well. Um, But these categories, the reason these are green is because these are the categories that I am a champion for. So I can actually answer on these categories, and that's set back here in categories and who is the team champion. You can select it here, or you can select from teams who is uh, what categories can this team answer for. And easy, I'm the only person on the HR team, and we see all three of we can answer all three of those categories. So if I can answer a question, I need to see a different view, right? I want to see the view, and I'll show you here. So I want to be able to see the view where I can add an answer. So what's this question? How do I know where to find more people? Actually, I'm not going to do this one. So if I'm a champion for this category, I need to be able to add an answer. So you can see here, I am a champion for the HR category. This person says, I'm worried the AI is going to take my job. Please support me. So if I open this up, I now have the ability to answer this question by saying new answer. And it'll pop up here and say, and that's great. So now that question is answered, and if I have more than one answer, um, then I can choose which is the best answer, which means it'll appear first. So, but let's say in my case, I don't want to actually answer this question because I don't think it's, maybe it's not my question to answer. Maybe I want to be able to assign it to IT. Well, I can do that from here. I can assign that to IT support, and it'll move its way off of the HR category down to IT support. So now I can't answer this question. When I click the same open button, now I see this view that just shows me the question, the category. I can't even change this category, right? I can't add an answer. I can't do anything here other than view because I don't have permissions to do this. So let's take a look at how that's working, because there's, I think, three sort of core pieces to this. One is this button here, and when I right click it, you'll see the formula. First off, it says if current person. So that's why on the settings page we needed that formula. I'll go back and take a look at it. It's a very simple formula that just says go to the people table and find out which CODA person is the current user, right? So this people table, I have a column called CODA person where I select who is actually here, and that's where you can pull user from. So the button to open this question says take a look at the current person and their category champion. So which champion categories they are champion for. If that group of categories, if they're a champion for this category, so whatever category row we're in, then open the answering question view. Otherwise, open just the regular view. And so this is the way that we can say if you're in one group of people, you see one view. If you're in another group of people, you see another view and layout. So, I mean, pretty simple stuff there. You just have to make sure you've got a couple of layouts and then a way to differentiate uh, between people, which is why you can't really just say user, because you can't attach user to anything. You need a separate people table where there's some ability to look up and say, okay, well, now I know what categories. Where's that? I've lost my column. There we go. My computer's running a bit slowly because it's trying to do too much, but all right, category champion. So that's one piece. The second, I think, interesting piece is, well, how come when I open up a question, that I am a champion for, can I select the category and make some changes here, but I can't in the IT support category where I'm not a champion. And well, there's your answer, right? You can tell just by clicking on it. It's going to say it's controlled by a formula. You can't change this. So this is another really awesome thing about different layouts is that all I've done here is created a second category column. The first is the actual relation column where a category is selected. The second is just a formula looking up to that column. Very easy formula. It's looking up to the same categories table. So it's still a relation column, but it has that formula to say, just show me whatever is in the category here. And that's it. And then because it's a formula column, there's nothing you can do with it. You can't touch it. You can't change it. You can only view it. So that's a really neat trick for locking down some of your information. You can see I've done it here as well on this canvas column. All right, so it's looking up. There's a best answer lookup. So that's the answer from the answers table that's been identified as the best answer. And I'm just pulling in the canvas here as a formula, which is awesome. It means I can't change it. And in terms of this table, all I did was make sure that the add new row buttons are off, and it's a formula relation as well, so you can't do anything here. All right, I can't. I wonder if I can search. No, see, I can't do anything from there, which is exactly what I want because that lets me see. Let's see. How do I know where to find more paper? Go to Staples. Not the best answer. Check the stockroom bottom shelf on the left. Best answer. Oh, and I need to take that label back off. All right, so nothing. Okay, great. So the only other thing you'll notice here is I've created this vertical line, and I needed two of them. So in this case, you can see the width is only 3 now compared to the width of this horizontal one, which is 2000. Versus my long vertical line, which is a height of 50 instead of a height of 25. And so where I'm using those differently is I put the short one here just as a separation between the question and the answer. I mean, maybe that's useful for you, maybe it's not. You can check right just by removing it. So it's like, I don't know, I think it makes a little bit of a difference. And I sort of like how it separates the two sections, but it needed to be short, and the other one that I was using was too long. So it's like if you see over in, I guess it's still in this page, right? Just over here. Yeah, here's the long one because this is a taller. It's got the label and the column, so I just wanted a taller one there. So it's like you can make as many of those lines as you want for whatever purpose. Now it's not perfect because ideally I would center this within the space there, and there's not really a lot I can do. I can make that wider, but I can't, for whatever reason, make it narrow. Like seems kind of silly that I can make the center column very wide, but I can't make it more narrow. So, I mean, you still have restrictions, but lots of ability to play kind of within those restrictions. So that's it. I hope this was helpful. Happy to answer any questions you have about layouts. The live build of this doc is linked above and in the description. And every Monday I'm live streaming another build. So yeah, come along, check it out. Again, CODA Guild. You can get the template and help with any of your questions like this within the CODA Guild. And love to have you there. And I think that's it. Yeah, take care.